We already talked about the playoffs having a huge impact on the upcoming trade market, but something that's possibly even more affected is free agency. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about in today's video. If you guys like the content, you already know what to do. Smash the like button, smash the subscribe button. Let's go for 7 likes on today's video, and let's get into this. Today's video is sponsored by PrizePicks, the player prop site most of y'all have come to know and love, legal in most US states. You just pick over or under on different stats for up to 10 times your entry. The playoffs are heating up and we've got some great games tonight, so I'm excited to make an entry. The first thing that jumped out to me was James Harden's points line was only at 19.5. Give me the over. Then I have to take Luka's points. Again, I'm taking his points in the playoffs every chance I can get. I'm taking Joel Embiid over 11 rebounds easy. And then lastly, Max Strus under 3 threes, as that just seems a little aggressive. All this happens, my $100 entry turns into $1,000. If you guys want to play along, we've got a pretty awesome promo. If you go to the link in the description or use code Jimmer. After your first deposit, if you do at least a $5 entry and Chris Paul can score at least 1 point in the remainder of this series, you're going to get $50 in promo cash. Pretty sick. Thank you PrizePicks for sponsoring today's video. For a while now, it's appeared that the 2022 free agency class was extremely weak, with very little unrestricted free agents, and most expecting the top guys to stick around. But over the course of the last few months, things have changed, creating a lot less clarity at the top, making free agency super interesting. And a lot of this change has actually come in the playoffs, which shouldn't be much of a surprise. Easily the biggest unrestricted free agent this offseason is none other than Zach LaVine. What's happened with him recently really surprised me, just given how much his career has taken off since arriving in Chicago. I really thought him leaving, while fun to mock, was ridiculous. That's not the case anymore. Between what's happened in the playoffs and some recent statements from him, I'm starting to lean closer to him actually being out the door. There's a lot of guys in this free agency class where it's really just going to come down to who is willing to give them the most money. That's not the case with LaVine. A max is coming his way, whether that's from the Bulls or elsewhere. So it's really just going to come down to what he wants to do. As far as this Bulls scenario, they're fresh off a first-round exit at the hand of the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, I think it's safe to say it's been a successful season, considering the preseason expectations and the unfortunate struggles with injury, most notably Lonzo Ball. But barring a big trade this offseason, which we've definitely seen rumored, such as a possible deal to bring in Gobert and send Vucevic out, LaVine might look at this team and think they've reached their ceiling. Ever since his breakout in Chicago, there haven't been many players I wanted to see more on a contender than LaVine. I've always felt he's been extremely disrespected, very similar to what we saw with Devin Booker before getting a competent roster. It's still hilarious to me the amount of criticism that Booker received from quote-unquote credible analysts for not being able to win despite individual success. When a player has a new coach practically every season and is playing alongside Josh Jackson, Dragan Bender, Isaiah Cannon, and Alex Len, there is nothing to be said about a player putting up empty stats. Russell Westbrook puts up empty stats. The fact that we heard that same thing for Devin Booker and then Zach LaVine in a year where he was averaging 27 points on practically 50, 40, 90 is laughable. I really think, like Booker, LaVine has the chance to be a top 2 option on a championship caliber team. Following the conclusion of the season, Chicago fans were thrown off guard by his statements. He said, "Obviously, you guys have been a really soft spot in my heart, and I have to do this as a business decision as a man, not just to be viewed any one way. I'm not automatically coming back, or I'm not automatically leaving," things like that. It's unrestricted free agency, and for my family and me, I've got to go into this like it's a decision where I have to be open-eyed, and obviously, talk to everybody in the summertime. I don't read too much into statements usually, but from my experience following the league extremely closely, statements like this usually precede unfortunate events for a certain fan base, in this case Chicago. Now, where can Zach LaVine actually go? And the answer is basically anywhere. As you guys know, a few years ago the salary cap felt like it actually existed when it came to free agency. Nowadays, with the frequency of sign-in trades, there really isn't many limitations when it comes to destinations for the top free agent. I think some of the more interesting scenarios brought out for LaVine would be pairing up with Luka Doncic in Dallas, Lillard in Portland, and possibly even DeJounte Murray in San Antonio. I can't help but having Dallas at the top of that list for me, as they would have a real shot to build something that competes at the top of the league on a yearly basis. Now, the team you're going to hear upcome a lot, as they usually do with anything that probably won't happen, is the Lakers. But this is going to be a tough one. Not impossible, but extremely tough. They would most likely have to do a 3-team sign-in trade involving Russell Westbrook, but hey, you never know. Regardless, based on recent events, I really think it's a 50-50 chance we're seeing Zach LaVine switch teams this offseason, which definitely makes things fun. Next up is James Harden. Now, I'm kind of fighting with fire here, as the 76ers play tonight. By the time you're probably seeing this, they've either been bounced out in 6 games, or they've pushed it to 7, going to Miami, where they've gotten smacked and have an injured Joel Embiid. Regardless, the point is, the 76ers' odds to advance to the Eastern Conference Finals, and especially beyond that, isn't great right now, creating a very tough decision this offseason. James Harden objectively since getting to Philly hasn't been great. Now, while I will say he's definitely made this team better with that role needing to be addressed, considering the expectations and the value they gave up to receive him with only this season being guaranteed, it has to be disappointing for Philly fans. There's no question James Harden wants the bag this offseason. This is probably his last big contract of his career. And the reality is, someone's going to give it to him. The 76ers are not going to have much leverage at all. And while it's assumed that the 76ers are just going to take that risk, as their hand is pretty much forced, it's not a guarantee. I still would have the odds heavily in favor of Harden staying, but this is a trade that really might haunt the 76ers. Just think about both scenarios. He either walks and they gave up the value of Ben Simmons and 2 first-round picks for a likely second-round exit, or they got to give him the bag and gave up that value for a possibly crippling contract. It's a tough spot, no doubt, and I'm curious on what your thoughts are on James Harden. Do you still think he has the chance to be a top 2 option on a championship caliber roster? The next guy we've got to mention is Jalen Brunson. We've seen it time and time again. This league has a ton of recency bias, which has made a lot of players a lot of money, sometimes not deserved. I'm not saying that's the case with Jalen Brunson, but whether it's a player showing up at the NCAA tournament, flying up the board like a Shabazz Napier or a James Young, or stepping up in the playoffs like a Luol Deng or Timofey Mozgov, we see players' value absolutely fly through the roof overnight. Jalen Brunson is going to be a free agent this offseason. Now, while it was always expected he was going to get a pretty big deal, averaging 16 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds this season, something changed in the playoffs. Luka Doncic missed the first 3 games. They needed Brunson to step up if they were going to get out of that series, and that's exactly what he did. He gave Luka a 2-1 lead by the time of his arrival, averaging 32 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds, shooting 51% from the field and 41% from 3 in those 3 games. Now, no surprise, his numbers went down once Luka came back, but they are still way up compared to the regular season, averaging over 23. This is big. Brunson might have shown enough to really prove he has the chance to be a star in this league, opening the door for a stupidly run front office, which there are quite a few of, to pay way too much money for him this offseason, given the limited options, putting the Mavericks in a tough spot. They found a player in Luka Doncic who's going to be a top 5 player year in and year out for the next decade. They really have to make sure that every front office decision is the right one so there's as few wasted seasons in Luka's career as possible. Now, for Jalen Brunson, I don't see why you wouldn't want to play with Luka, so this is probably just going to come down to the money. If the Mavericks are willing to give market value, he's probably staying, but with teams like the Knicks, Pacers, and Pistons rumored to be going after him this offseason, they're probably going to have to give him a ton. It wouldn't shock me for him to clear $20 million a year with ease, a number that's going to come with some pretty hefty expectations. Another player that's worth mentioning is Kyrie Irving. We talked about him a little bit in that trade video, but with the Nets getting bounced out in the first round and Kyrie having a player option this offseason, well, again, a lot of the guys we're talking about today, I still favored a return. I think his decision is a lot less clear than it would be if the Nets were still playing right now. Another player we need to pay attention to is DeAndre Ayton. Last year, the Suns shocked a lot of people deciding not to extend him to the max, and well, not much has changed for him as a player since then, and the Suns have a long road ahead just to make it as far as they did this past year. They're up just 1 game on the Mavericks going into Dallas. If they advance, they're going to be heavy underdogs against the Warriors, the current odds-on favorite to win the title. It's hard to say what the Suns are feeling, but if they question his value at the max last year, what's changed? Ayton's going to be a restricted free agent, and plenty of teams are willing to bring the rings truck. It's going to come down to what the Suns are willing to cough up. We've given them a lot of slack for passing on Luka in favor of Ayton with the success they've had as a team the past 2 years, but man, if they let him walk, it's going to go down as an all-time mistake. But that's the end video, guys. You guys tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked the video, smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.